Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and this week, my special guest is Deirdre Sinnott. I hope I pronounced that right. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Ann. I'm really happy to be here and happy to discuss, the book and life and everything else with you.
Oh, cool. I hope I pronounced your name right.
You did well.
Thank you. So why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and the viewers to start with?
Well, I am a 61-year-old debut novelist. I grew up in Utica, New York. And when I left there, I was getting involved in the theater and used that as a career as a stage manager for many years, and also wanted to be a wannabe director. But there was something standing in my way, which it took me many years to understand. And that's, this thing, which was an abuse situation when I was a 6-year-old. It was something that just, I wanted to believe that it didn't matter. I wanted to believe that any problems that I was having with alcoholism or with substance abuse, that they were just my fault, and that it was important to be strong and not think about my inner pain. And it took me a long time before I finally was able to let go of all of that. I drank for about 20 years and quit drinking 25 years ago last month. I just had my anniversary, which was pretty amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. What's funny is when you say it's 25 years, I can imagine this, quarter, nice, shiny quarter, and somebody tells me it's a quarter of a century. It's like, what? That's so long.
But yet it flies, right? It flies by really fast.
Absolutely. So once I stopped, drugging myself with alcohol mostly, I found out that I was, a fairly happy person, but that I had this old abuse, and that a lot of my own actions during the time when I was drinking, that they came really from that pain that I didn't want to feel, and that I had to actually go through feeling the pain of the abuse and what it did to me as a person before I could really move on and try to be more healthy, both mentally and physically. So that was a big revelation to me, and my life has never been the same. It's not like I stepped right out of drinking and right into being able to think clearly and work on a novel and understand my own situation in life and that kind of thing. It took a number of years to just kind of get focused. And I didn't really start writing until 2004. And it's not a big surprise that I was writing. I mean, I wanted to be a writer when I was growing up, and tried, but never had any follow through, never had much help. And it just, I needed to have a new attitude, really. I think that's the basic thing that changed. And I got that from just trying to put down the stick that I was beating myself with all the time. And so I started, writing. I was writing a memoir, which really was a way of kind of doing therapy, to look back and to take a deep look and see where things changed, where I could have done something differently, but decided instead to, divert myself or that kind of thing. And then finally took a step. And I think this is a step that people sometimes feel like when it comes to writing anyway, they feel they shouldn't have to take. But I went into a class, and it was all adults around my age. And we were trying to become writers. And it's that thing about getting help and asking for help and getting it that is so miraculous to me, something that I would not have allowed myself to in the same way.
You know, I talked to a guy his episode airs tomorrow as we record this, but anyway, for this coming week's episode, as we record this, you're going to be hearing this later. But he said if you don't ask people for help, you deny them the opportunity to help. Hold on, my phone. Thank you. Sorry. Deny them the opportunity to help you. And I don't remember exactly how I said it, but basically, if you don't ask for help, you deny yourself the opportunity to be helped by someone, but you also deny another person the opportunity to help, because people love to help.
I find that's true, and sometimes it's harder to accept help sometimes than it is to get help.
Sometimes it's hard to ask for help, because I mean, I don't mind talking to people, but I get shy when it comes to asking for help, because I guess we have a hard time. I mean, and I'm learning a little bit more, but I guess it's because we have a hard time with rejection.
Oh, well, that's a good reason, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that one of the reasons why I might have been targeted, to be abused was because of kind of a tough family situation with an unhappy mother who really felt, it seems to me, looking back at it, really felt that maybe we kids were a little bit too much for her. and so it wasn't, I see people, it's really weirdly painful. I see people, like, I live in New York City, I see people on the subway, and when they're being so sweet to their kids, I think, oh man, I wish I had that. But I have to do that for myself now, and find people who, are interested in and go to the right places for the help, instead of, I kept going to the wrong places, if you understand what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong places, wrong people.
Right. And I don't know about you, but not only is it writing therapeutic, because I've dealt with some emotional and verbal abuse in my life, in a couple of relationships I was in, and I turned not only to writing but music.
Yeah.
I don't know if that worked for you, but that's something that people may want to consider. Music is another therapeutic. What is the word I'm looking for? It's another way of us to delve. I can't words today. Anyway, it's part of the healing process. Let's put it that way. But so, what inspired you to become a writer?
I think it was that's a good question, because I don't think other than wanting to be a writer and loving reading, I was one of those kids that you could drop off at the library and later pick me up, and I've read all the stuff, everything in the children's library, everything. So I think in part it was the pleasure that I got in escaping in books, and to be shown all of these new worlds, and to have my horizons widened. So I really enjoyed them. And then the idea of creating that came out of, I think, a need to understand my own pain. And I feel like with every book, you're putting some part of yourself into it.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
And that's true, even if the characters, as is the case in Mrs. Galway, are totally different than my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of trying to find areas of my experience that can be in sympathy, or that can be useful for expressing who the characters are. I've never, I don't even know, when it comes to Helen Galway, the main character of the book, do I know what it's like to be a young woman kind of married to a much older man in the 1830s? Well, no. I don't even know, I had to learn about what, technologies in the kitchen were like. I had to learn it all from scratch. It was very slow going when I started to write it because I wanted to make sure that I got it right.
Did you research it as you went? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but did you research as you went or did you do the research before you started the book?
Both. So I had in 2007, I'd gotten very curious about whether there was documents about the Underground Railroad in Utica, New York. Because when they talk about the Underground Railroad, sometimes from where I sit, they talk about how people came up through Pennsylvania, New York City, Albany, Troy, and to Syracuse, which is west of Utica. So they just like skipped over Utica. And I was a little like miffed about that, I guess. And so I started looking for the Underground Railroad in the index of books, and I found it someplace. And it was the founding meeting of the New York Anti-Slavery Society was mentioned along with the riot against the founding meeting, which happened on October 21st, 1835. And that incident was a kind of key for me because it really was this kind of attack against people gathering and free speech. And it was also a good way to show the struggle against slavery as it happened in Utica. So I had researched that incident and spoken about it publicly. And I'd also kind of looked into a more general understanding about the struggle between abolition of slavery and the different political currents within that. But when it came to writing the book, and I had this big map from 1825 that I blew up and it was on my wall, and I had all the different locations so that I could just look up and see it. And that was very important to me to get an orientation, especially because the Erie Canal, which was an incredibly important waterway at the time that went from Albany in the east of the New York State all the way west to Buffalo, that was kind of new then. It was finished in 1825, and this is just 10 years later. So it's a very important waterway, and it went right straight through Utica. So I had to understand all about the Erie Canal and learn about how they had mules pulling these boats with flat bottoms. The thing was only 4 feet deep, the water, and they had these tow paths. And now I've heard about this as a kid growing up in Utica, in New York State, because it's New York State history. But I never really kind of got it, just how important it was in terms of opening up the western half of the state, pushing the indigenous people out of the area, this to open up land for white settlers, and to the commerce of Utica and how important it was. And so I kind of got really interested in the Erie Canal, and there's a number of scenes you've probably already read through a number of scenes where the Erie Canal plays an important point. It's right in the opening.
Right, where they're pulling a boat with a mule, yeah.
Right, so all of that is something that I had to learn as I went. I had a general outline of the book, but having a general outline is to sort of know the direction you're going, but you don't know exactly how you're going to get there and exactly how each character is going to act within the book. So that was.
Go ahead. I was about to say, do your characters tell you how the story's going to act as you do your research? Mine talk to me, so.
Yeah. It's an interesting communication back and forth because, for instance, the character of Maggie, who is a very important character, she's the cook at the Galway house. She's formerly was enslaved by the family, but she stays. And she's also just a really bright, brilliant character.
Smart woman.
Yeah.
Feisty sometimes too.
Absolutely. I mean, she's a
she's a pistol
with, right? I mean,
she's a pistol. She can be nice when she wants to, but she's a pistol.
Yeah. So I didn't even know that character was gonna just come out, and you know, she's one of my favorite characters, in part because I modeled her after a friend of mine who just recently passed away from cancer. And when she read the book, she read a very early version. She goes, "You based Maggie on me, didn't you?" And I said, no. And I was sort of in denial. And then I was looking at it, and later I came back to it. I said, "Yeah, I did." I knew it too. So she was very happy. Maggie was.
I can picture this plump woman about maybe 5'4", 5'3", 5'4". But even though I don't know how tall Maggie is, but she's a pistol. She's nice when she's nice normally, but don't make her mad.
Yeah, and she's very generous too.
Yeah.
I mean, she was very willing to help Helen when she needs help and befriend her. But if you get on her wrong side,
oh boy,
and forget about it.
Yep.
So Maggie was one of those characters that, as you say, I mean, really spoke to me, really needed to be given a role.
It's like she pushes herself in the story.
Right. She is the glue. She is the glue in a lot of ways. So yeah, to go back to the original question, to have her move around in the kitchen, for instance, she's making food. The bell rings in there, indicating that somebody needs her in the library. And she's got her hands in batter. And I'm like, wait a minute. Is there running water in these houses at this point?
No.
Only in the most rich house, anything even close to running water. So she has an outside well with a pump, and she has, brought water in for the day, which is one of those chores that, you and I don't have to do anymore, that people around the world do in other places. But right now we don't, the water comes in.
But I think if you go to and in Georgia, there's this farm, Gerald Plantation. It's like a historic cotton farm. I think you can still, if you go to places like that, tourist sites, you can still see the well, the old fashioned well with a pump.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this place in upstate New York called the Farmers Museum. It's in Cooperstown, where the baseball museum is, Baseball Hall of Fame. And they have this town that's set up, and it has all these little stores. It has a meeting house, has a church, has stables, has farm equipment. So I was able to go there and just look at things, take pictures of things, so that when I got back, I could describe a carriage, and I could describe this and describe that. And so it was extremely helpful. All of these historical sites that they're preserving for people to be able to go and experience, they are really vital. And I hope they don't, that we continue to honor our past by having them, there.
Wow. And before we got started recording, you said that you'd be willing to read a part of it for us.
Oh, sure, absolutely. The part that I'm going to read is a very, very early chapter, and Helen is up in her room, and a storm is happening. So here we go. Lightning flickered. Helen counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thunder. The clatter of rain on the roof slowed, as if God had simply moved his water jug to some other spot. The storm was moving off. She took a deep breath before plunging into the backyard. Light rain landed on her face as she marched to the shed. The iron handle was in place, but still she swung the door wide open and stepped inside. A woman's voice cried out from the dark. A metal bowl crashed to the ground, and Helen heard scrambling, as if she had startled a sleeping fox. Out of the gloom, a skinny black boy leaped before her, a hay fork in his hands. Helen gasped and backed up to the frame of the door, her muscles twitching in fear. "Stop, Joe," came a sharp female voice from the floor. The boy neither dropped the long wooden hay fork nor backed away. "Sorry, miss," said the voice. "Keep away from me," cried Helen, stepping back. "I told you," said the voice sternly. "Get back here." The boy lowered the weapon, but did not withdraw. "Sit down," the voice commanded. He kept his eyes on Helen as he kneeled. He revealed, sitting on the dirt floor, a woman, her legs straight out in front of her. She leaned against a sturdy built-in cabinet, a very large pregnant belly resting between her legs. "What are you doing here?" demanded Helen, thinking that she would run and get someone. Who? Her husband? No, he had a broken leg. The doctor? No, not him. Heavens. Maggie. She would get Maggie out here. "We sorry, miss." "Just getting out of the rain," said the woman, talking very quickly. "Just getting out of the storm. Don't worry. Joe here got surprised is all." "You can't be here," said Helen, calming a little, stepping back into the shed. Looking at the woman more closely, she noticed that her tan blouse drooped with dampness. Her skin, the color of newspaper left too long in the sun, was heavily freckled, and her face was round as a casserole dish. Her hair disappeared under a dirty gray cap. A shawl was pulled tight across her shoulders as if she were freezing. Suddenly, the woman clutched her stomach and groaned. "Mama," the boy cried. "Is the baby coming now?" said Helen, her voice strangled with new fear. The last time she'd been around a woman this close to laying in was during her mother's labor. Poor Mama had screamed and ranted when the baby wanted to come out too soon. She had groped at her own breeches when the ordeal was finally over. But the ordeal had all finally ended, but the time she spent waiting for her father to get a doctor had been full of blood and panic, leaving Helen helpless and her mother and her new brother quite dead. All the doctor had done was hold a mirror to her mother's mouth and declare that she was at peace. I'm getting a doctor, Helen said, looking back at the house. "No, no," cried the woman. "Don't. The baby ain't coming. Don't bring no one else out here." "You can't have the baby here. I'm getting someone." "No, no, no," the woman pleaded in a desperate voice, her hands skyward, fingers knotted together as if in prayer. The boy jumped to his feet and grabbed Helen's arm. "Let me go," she yelled and jerked backward. "No, please, don't be scared. He's just a boy," begged the woman. With the next breath, she began to sing the first tremulous words of a lullaby. "Dear Baba, aya, Mama is right here." Helen froze, stunned by the thin, reedy voice as it followed the simple course of a slow, rhythmic melody. "Now you go to sleep, aya, sleep the night away." Something inside Helen shifted. She stared back at the woman who drew her hands around her pregnant belly, hugging the unborn babe. The tune, so plain and soothing, pierced Helen to her very marrow. For a moment, she had a vision of her own mother, alive and young, her face close. She too was singing. The woman's voice cracked as tears coursed down her face. Helen felt tears gathering in her own eyes. "Baba in the hay, aya, Baba sleep away." All was silent. Together, as if on cue, all three released a breathy sigh. Helen wiped at her eyes and closed the shed door. She pulled an overturned bucket to the center of the entranceway and sat quietly for a moment. "Who are you?" "Amari, miss. My son, Joe." The room darkened and brightened as clouds streaked across the sky. And that's it.
Wow. Thank you for pronouncing that name, because I had trouble with it, but trying to read it. But thank you for that. That was amazing. Okay, so I was going to ask you about your process. So you plot your novel, you plotted your novel somewhat before you started. I know you had to do the research, but are you a plotter by nature, or do you plot a little, pants a little?
I think that's more like what it is. I sort of had an idea of where it was going. I knew some of the basic outlines, but there's a very central mystery, let's call it. And I had already had some idea, but when I finally was doing research and found out what a crime that a number of people who had enslaved people in New York State had done, it was like this revelation to me. I had never expected them to take the actions that they had been taken, and I knew that I had to include it in the book. So I can't give it away. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to keep listening if you hopefully you want to listen all the way to the end.
Oh, I'm going to read it, believe me.
Yeah, and so anyway, you'll know there is a primary kind of sin that is committed and that has consequences throughout the decades. So that's based on reality, and a lot of the book, there's historical incidences that I put in the book that are real and did happen in Utica.
Wow. So what are you working on now?
I am working on a novel set in the Revolutionary War in the Mohawk Valley, which is a river valley that runs east and west from Albany over to towards Syracuse and on up toward Oneida Lake. And it's going to be from the perspective of somebody whose husband is a loyalist. In other words, it's 1777, the Revolutionary War has already begun, and her husband doesn't support the Patriots. He supports the king, and he is paying the consequences for that. And the book centers around his wife and the decisions that she has to make. Who does she support? What are her politics? She hasn't bothered to think about it too much, but now there's a war on, so she's got to.
Wow. So, do you have any tips or advice that you want to leave for our listeners and viewers?
In terms of writing, absolutely. You have to find other writers, and if you have a small writing group all together, that's great, because getting feedback, even if you think you're writing beautifully, sometimes people don't understand where you're going. And so to have somebody just notice, I didn't get that. What were you trying to do? Helps you with more clarity. It helps you with the pace. And the other thing, just in terms of writing, is tension. You want tension all the time.
Yes.
Good tension, bad tension, whatever it is, up the ante. Yeah, I made it so difficult on these characters.
You know what? And come to think of that, I'm an editor in training because I feel like God's calling me to do that. And that's what I tell my client. You've got to have the tension in the story. It doesn't matter what genre you write in, you still need that tension. That's what keeps the reader turning pages.
That's right. And it could be about love. It could be about kids. It could be about anything, but, and you can have moments where there's a relief of the tension, give
the reader a chance to catch their breath and then ramp it right back up.
That's right. It's good advice. It's good advice for your students and anybody who wants to, I remember that I read this one thing that was about advertising, and it said that the purpose of the first sentence is to get you to read the second sentence. And the purpose of the second sentence is to get you to read the rest of the paragraph and to continue that.
I like that. And that's so true about books too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So where can people find you online?
They could find me. The book is available everywhere, and a lot of people spelled the title incorrectly. It's The Third Mrs. Galway, not Galloway. So it's Galway. And if you just go to thirdmrsgalway.com, you'll get to my website, or you can go to Bookshop or Amazon or any of the outlets. The book is also an ebook, and it's also an audio book, so that it's available in all of those. If you have an Audible subscription, you can get an audio book of it.
You know, it's funny, after you sent me the advanced reader copy, I saw that on Audible. And I could have gotten it that way too, but it's okay. I'm still reading it the way I'm reading it. So, but yeah, go out and get this book. It's really good. It's a page turner. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Dan. I appreciate that.
And thank you for being my special guest this week. And we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched thousands. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys. And remember, your story matters. Have a blessed day, everyone.